does that mean, by the way? She may seek to harm the country.
I think it's quite ridiculous. I think the pattern that has been established by the Israeli regime is that those, number one, that speak out and are critical of the Israeli occupation of Palestine, that talk openly about the fact that Israel is an apartheid state, have been barred or not granted passage into Palestine. I mean, people like Archbishop Desmond Tutu, for example, government ministers that have been going to Palestine or intending to go to Palestine on official government business have been denied entry to Palestine. Former Higher Education Minister Bleden Zemande, Minister Tula Singlesi as well, but also even World Council Churches leader Isabel Piri as well, but even United Nations rapporteurs that are actually doing work in the occupied Palestinian territories have been denied entry into that region, into Palestine, by the Israeli regime. So those that speak critically of Israel or are seen to be pro-Palestinian are then denied entry into Palestine.
Well, we should probably suggest then that Shashi Naidoo's being denied entry into Israel really has nothing to do with what she will have said or the stance that she would have taken, because we all know the history of how she got to be to go on this fact-finding mission. So it's probably more a stance against you, given her association with you now, BDS.
So, I mean, so the Israeli government, for example, is arguing that Shashi Naidoo made the travel to Palestine on a BDS kind of sanctioned trip, which is not necessarily true. I mean, the one thing is that, this trip has been, she's working in tandem with South African Council of Churches. And you'd remember, you're right, and things since the the social media kind of outburst that took place mid-June, and then she then decided to undertake this trip to learn better about the situation that's there. But of course, I mean, the order to deny Shashi Naidoo entry into Palestine really came from the highest officers of the Israeli ministry, government, from the Ministry of Security Affairs and the ministry, that deals specifically with combating and dealing with the efforts of the global BDS movement. So in essence, it is really about saying we don't want those that are associated with BDS in any form. They view Israel as BDS as a strategic threat, and this they've actually put into legislation. They've established a special ministry to fight and combat the global efforts of the BDS movement.
Interesting. Now, what had you organized for her? In other words, who was she going to see? Where was she going to go? Had she been allowed to go through?
I mean, to understanding, the South African Council of Churches had put an itinerary that, made Shashi explore, issues around children's rights within Palestine, political prisoners in Palestine, but also Jewish progressive organizations in Palestine, Israel, that are working inside Israel and talking about the fact that Israel in itself is an occupying power, progressive Jewish organizations within Palestine as well, and various other organizations that deal with various issues around women's issues, children's issues, and so on.
How has she received this?
So there's been kind of limited communication with Shashi. To understanding, she's in transit, trying to make her way back to Jordan. Then from then on, she'll probably get on the first flight that she can find coming back to South Africa. So I think it would be an interesting conversation to see what her response is post this treatment. And Comrade Vuyo, and I say this as a comrade because that's how we should really treat some of these issues. And I think that, and that's our understanding in terms of the parallels that we draw between, apartheid South Africa and apartheid Israel. So it's quite interesting to see what her reaction will be. The one issue is that this happens on a daily basis where Palestinians are concerned. So this is a daily occurrence where Palestinians are concerned in terms of restrictions to movement, for example, and denial of various other freedoms where Palestinians are concerned. This is a daily reality for Palestinians.